Good evening, everyone. It is Monday night all over again, and welcome to Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation. My name is Donna Gray Banks. I am your host, and our special guest tonight is Romalita Harris, author of Conversations in Lavender, a woman's healing conversations with God through poems and prayers. Welcome, Romalita, to Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation.
Hi
Zoom In
there.
on a Fresh, thank you for being here. Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation is brought to you by Eilers Diamonds LLC, Lee's Press, Milton McCulloch, author of Love and Emancipation, and Dante Productions, whose next production is in August. Not quite sure the date today, but we will have it on our next conversation. And the Fresh Book Festival, which is, of course, in February 2024. February 22, 23, and 24 in the beautiful city of Daytona Beach. The Daytona one is open for you to sign up if you want to get your room for the Fresh Book Festival. They also have a huge jazz event there that weekend. So everybody who wants to come, please get your room. I can send you the link if you need it. Just give me a call or hit me up on freshbookfestivals@gmail.com. And you can leave any questions for Romalita in the chat room. And this conversation is being recorded. So good evening, Romalita. Please give us a brief background.
Oh, good evening. Thank you for having me this evening. I'm so excited to be here. A little brief background. I would have to start in the very, very beginning. I grew up in Newark, New Jersey. That's where I was born and raised in a Black Baptist church. I am a child of God. I gave my life to Christ at 8 years old. And from that vantage point, that is the nucleus of everything that I have done in my life. Growing up in that church, it was instilled in me that I was a child of God, and therefore everyone else was a child of God, and I treated people as such. I am a mom of two. I am the eldest of three girls. I'm married. This Friday will be 30 years.
Wow.
I am a hospital chaplain and a former history teacher.
Very good. So you had two younger sisters that you had to fight for your clothing.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah. That's
My
right.
older sister, God bless her, Christine. I was in her clothes all the time. So yeah, I do
Yeah, my
understand.
sisters were.
I do understand. So talk about the Rockingham County Leadership Ambassador Program for young women. And for those who don't know, where is Rockingham County?
Rockingham County is in Rockingham County, North Carolina. So we live here in Reedsville, North Carolina, and in 2014, I started a program for young women, and that program came about because of, I think in 2010, one of the very first school shootings outside of Columbine happened. And after that, there was Sandy Hook in 2012. And I think with Sandy Hook, something different happened inside me. I experienced secondary trauma and really had a hard time with the deaths of those young children, to the point where I just went into a deep depression. And it was more than just empathy or sympathy. It was compassion on, I don't even know what kind of level, but I prayed to God, what is it that I can do? I'm just one person. How can I make a difference? And the result of that was the leadership program with young women, because I felt like kind of the butterfly effect, where you might do a small thing in one place, but something big would show up later in life. And I thought if I could somehow speak to young women who are the keepers of the home, who rear the children, who communicate with their friends, that somehow those people would start to change things. And so I set about doing this. I started with 4 young women, and right before the pandemic, we had about 40 girls in a waiting list. And so we had to start all over after the pandemic again. So now we have about they do all kinds of things. We focus on emotional intelligence, and I feel that's important for them because we want them to have a voice. And a voice doesn't always mean standing up in a crowd. Sometimes it could be supporting other people. Sometimes it could be writing. And the motto is leadership is not a title, it's a behavior. And
Mm.
so the girls are required to do 100 hours of community service. Two of the big projects that they do, one is called water aid to elderly residents, and they go out in the community, collect water, and they distribute it to senior citizens in the community. The other big project they do is called Kinder Readers, and they spend 3 to 4 weeks in the summer, and they go into 2 or 3 childcare centers, and they read to little kids. And at the end, they have collected all of these books throughout the year, and then they give the little kids free books. They get to choose them, and they also teach them reading skills. So that's the leadership program in a
Well,
nutshell.
why young ladies and not young men?
I just felt more of an affinity to
Mhm,
young women.
mhm.
But this coming year, I've toyed around with starting a program for young men, but I'm just pulled so much with these young women. It requires so much of my time
Yes,
that
I'm
I
sure.
really did not. And then at the end of the program, they have a ball. And at the ball, it's like a gala, and it's like a debutante ball. So once they've completed the 100 hours, they have this big debutante ball. And then they speak, because part of it is learning how to speak in public. And and articulate your feelings about things. And so they have to give a speech about what service project they did really moved them or touched them, or how the program changed them. So each one of them are required to do that. There's a big waltz, there's a father-daughter dance. So it's a lot of work, but I've toyed around many, many times of bringing in young men.
Well, I mean, it takes a man to raise a man, right? Understood.
It does, it does. And
You
I've
know,
I've tried
yeah,
to get
yeah.
men to take it on and say,
Yes.
would you do a program over here? And I'll help you to lay the groundwork, but can you do it? Because I really feel just what you said, that it is important for men to get in front of other men.
There's a someone on screen named Ty. Do you know that person?
I
T-Y-E?
do.
Okay.
I do know Sean. I do. We went to Divinity School together.
Okay. So tell us about the other program, Rockingham Reads, one county, one book. Tell us about that.
Rockingham Reads, One County, One Book was started in 2006, and it was to bring people together in community and conversation. So each year we select a book, and we put it out in the community, and we have events throughout the county that follow the theme of the book. So we started with a book called Blood Done Sign My Name. We've done To Kill a Mockingbird. We've done The Kite Runner. We've done The Pack. We've done a book every year. We did a tribute to Charles Dickens, a lot of books. So
And so how does that work? Because that's a wonderful program. Do
so
you go ahead? Tell me.
the steering committee, there's a steering committee, and we argue and fight over what book we're going to choose. So we read several books, and then we have to come together in a consensus of what book we're going to choose. And then we put out a newsletter that this is the community read. We go into the school. Sometimes we'll choose a book for the high school students to read. We'll go in and we'll do an activity with them. We'll have a book discussion in the high schools. One year we did a book related to the Holocaust, and throughout several months we did activities related to the Holocaust. We had a survivor. He was in his 80s at the time, and he had been in a concentration camp and had been liberated, and we had him come speak to all of the high school students, every high school in our county he went to. And then afterwards we donated a peace pole to every
Mhm.
high school. Yeah, so it's a lot of work doing it. We serve food at the events. To Kill a Mockingbird was very, very successful. We Skyped in Mary Badham, who played Scout in the movie To Kill a Mockingbird. So it is a lot of
I
work.
love that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But there's a big culminating event at the end. But throughout the different events in the community, at each library, we host a book discussion, and then there's a big event at the end.
Well, To Kill a Mockingbird has been banned in the state of Florida. So, for those of you who don't know that, which is unbelievable, but
Unreal.
yeah, unbelievable. But there are so many other books that we could make as community events. Now, I don't want to belabor this because there's more to talk about, but how did you get the parents engaged in this process, or did you do it by community, like the Boys and Girls Club, the schools, after school programs? Did you actually get the parents involved in any way?
In the books discussions?
Yes, ma'am.
So we went through the teachers.
Okay.
So we went to English teachers, and that's how we did the book discussions. We went through the teachers and set up a day and time. We donated the books to the class. We had a classroom set of books that rotated around to the different high schools, and the teachers would say when they wanted them. And so we would get the books over, like I might pick up 30 books and take them over to the school, and we would just rotate those books around.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a really good platform. You have to share more about because that's something we all could do in our
Yeah.
communities, right? We really could.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's called the Rockingham Reads, One County, One Book in Rockingham County, North Carolina. So thank you so much for that. So tell us how long you've been writing and what inspired you to write this book.
I have been writing.
You've been reading, I know that.
I love to read. I've been reading since I was a little girl. I love to read. I love books. And I remember, I have to say, going back to 5th grade, when I was in the 5th grade, I did this serial for my class. It was kind of like a soap opera. So I started writing this serial, like with the characters were the students in my class. And it was a cliffhanger each day or every 2 days that I would write the story, and I would bring it, and this story would go around the whole class, and there would be a cliffhanger, and then they would have to wait for me to write the other part. Then I would bring it in and everybody would read it and go around the class. So I started writing then, and I did that until I ran out of paper. And my mom said, "You're gonna have to stop using up all this paper." She didn't know what I was doing with it. She didn't know I was using it writing these stories. And then I told the kids in my class, I can't write any more stories because my mom said I'm using up too much of my paper. And so they started bringing the paper in to me so I could keep writing the stories. So that went on for a little while, for that whole year of 5th grade. But I never really had anybody, encourage me to write, but I kept doing it, writing on little scratches of papers, poems and such. And, then as I got older, I went through something really, really traumatic, and I just started writing. And it was always at twilight. I would just wake up and I would have these poems in my head. And at first I just kind of dismissed them. And then I knew that they were really, really real. And so I started keeping a pad next to my bed and writing the poems down. Whatever God gave me, I would write it down. And I used to think, oh, well, I'll just remember it when I get up later, but I would forget it. I would lose it. And so I realized I had to write it down, and they were just full on poems. It was as if someone was dictating it to me, and I just would just write it. And so the inspiration and the catalyst for it was almost like I had swallowed my voice because of what had happened to me.
So the trauma kind of triggered your
Right.
okay,
So
your
triggered writing. And so they just come out of nowhere. I would just have all the words would just push out of my head, and I wouldn't even have to think about it. Sometimes the whole poem would just come out, and all I did was just put the pen on the paper and the words would just come.
So are those poems part of this group?
Yes.
In the book? Okay, conversations. And so how far back are we talking?
At least to 2016,
Wow,
I started.
okay. And when did you, okay, so you said you wrote it down. Did you write any other time? Did you go to coffee shops? Did you go to, a special place in your house?
No, I like to walk in the morning. And so when I'm walking in the morning, sometimes I would have snatches of poems come to me then, just out walking. And so a couple weeks ago, I was out walking and I saw a tree down,
Mm.
and a whole poem just came to me.
So what do you do? Talking to your phone? I mean, how do you do that while you're walking?
So it just started to come to me, and I just tried to remember it. And when
Okay.
I immediately sat down and I wrote it out. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to hear it. Yes.
Okay. I saw her fallen. She lay motionless, her whole hidden, now exposed, cracked and wrung out. Centuries of her lyrics and colors turned silent and ashen. She made no sound as she fell, and when she landed, there was a deafening thud, and the earth could not bear the weight of her life. So she made a bed for her, and then I heard her cry out, Alleluia, Alleluia, but no one came.
Oh, wow. That's really nice. When a tree falls from the root, that means it has been around a long
Yeah.
time. Basically,
Yeah.
they're just saying, Uncle, you know what? I can't do it, I can't do anything else. So yeah, that's a wonderful inspiration. So thank you so much. You should have taken a picture.
I think I did.
Okay,
I
good.
think
Yeah. So that
I
would be
think
nice to have next to the poetry, the picture of the fallen tree. Thank you for sharing that with us. So let's talk about your publishing experience. How was it?
I had a wonderful publisher from beginning to end. He was really, really kind and just walked me through
And how did you
all the
find them? We have a lot of young authors and a lot of seasoned authors
Mhm.
who just can't seem to find the right person. Was it a magnetic feeling that you had about this young man? Was it, tell us what it was. It told you that he was the one. Because there's a lot of people out.
So I had been praying about these poems because I had these poems. God had already told me they were going to be a book. He said, this is not going to be for naught. I want you to write this down. And so in 2016, I started writing them down. And my husband is a surgeon, and the publisher, William Lee, came into his office one day. And so my husband was asking me, like just the night before, about how I found a publisher and had, how was it going with the writing? And so William Lee comes into his office, and my husband usually just sticks to the script. Sometimes he's really busy, doesn't have time to chit chat and all of this. But this particular day, he comes in, this young black man comes in, he's professional, and just, so he says, what do you do? And he says, I'm a publisher. So when he gets home, he says, you're not going to believe what happened to me today and who came in my office. And I said, what? And so he says, a publisher came into my office, a Black
Wow.
publisher came into my office. And I said, stop kidding me. He was like, no. And I said, did you get his number? He said, I got his number. And I knew before I even called him the next day, I knew already that this was divine, And so I called him, and everything was piece of cake from there.
So how did you lay the book out? Was it about, did you do the poems of trauma first, and then the poems of reflection, and then the poems of healing? Or are they all kind
Yeah,
of thrown together? Okay.
they kind of unfolded that way. You can
Okay.
see, you can hear the light. You can feel the light and the
You can feel
lift,
the words changing. Yeah.
changing from heavy to lighter, from beginning to end. You can really see that in the tone of the poems from beginning to end. And I think one of the first ones is called Conversations after midnight. And when I wrote that poem, that was, again, one of those poems where I didn't think about it. I just woke up, these are the words, started writing, every word just came out without me prompting or trying to change anything, just came out. And after I wrote it, I was scared. I was afraid of what I've written. And
yes, I completely understand it. I read back on the books that I wrote, and I thought, who wrote that? And how did that happen? Right?
I was frightened by what I had written. And so, yeah.
But very therapeutic, right? For
It
you.
was very
Right.
therapeutic for me, because over time, as I was writing, I was getting better. I was starting to heal. I was having these conversations with God about how I was feeling. And those conversations became very therapeutic for me.
Did you go to therapy? Where, you know,
I
so
did.
many melanated
did.
people are afraid of therapy.
Yeah, I
And
did.
so, did you go right away, or did it
Right.
take right away?
No,
Okay.
no,
Right.
right away. Mhm.
And did
Right.
you find a therapist right away? Most of the people that I talk to say the first one wasn't that great, the second one wasn't that great. So just, you know, briefly tell us about, because writing is therapeutic and you really can release a lot of things that happen to you in your life, but there's nothing wrong, to the audience of melanated people. There's nothing wrong with going to see a therapist. So let's talk about, did you have any pushback from going in the first place?
Going to a therapist?
Yes.
No, I didn't have any pushback from going to a therapist. I wanted to see a therapist. I knew that I needed a therapist. I saw about 5 of them before I found the right one. And when I found the right one, I knew it was the right one. I knew it was the right person. And over time, as I was talking with him and saying things, there came a moment where I was trying to figure out why I wasn't healing, why, I was doing all these things. I was praying. I was doing everything I could. I was bathing. It got to the point where I was doing like 10 devotionals a day. I was just immersing myself in God's word. I'm like, why isn't this changing? I want to change. I don't want to be sad like this. I don't want to be depressed like this. And my therapist said to me, he got with his colleagues and they, discussed different patients, and they were trying to figure out, she's doing all this stuff. Why? What is blocking? What is the block? And so he came back to me and he said, I think that that if you heal, that you'll have some decisions to make. And as long as you can stay stuck, then you won't have to make the decision. And that was everything.
Everything.
That blew like the gates wide open. And it made a lot of difference. It made a lot of difference. Him telling
you
me
can
that
feel really comfortable in the muck and the mire.
Yeah.
It starts to feel good.
Yeah. And so this is like home, when you're carrying around all this baggage, it starts to become like
you just swim in it because it just feels good, right? Yeah.
These are my friends here. These are my friends.
I don't want them to go away, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So once he said that to me, someone said that to me, my eyes were really, really opened. So, yeah.
And the progression from darkness into the light. Are you still in therapy, by the way?
No, not any.
So what was the pivotal moment when you said, okay, I'm good?
I think it was right after that. It was right
after that.
Really? Okay. But once he said, you're doing this because you don't want to come out of it. And I said, I do want to come out of it. I just didn't understand why I was still stuck here. But now that you shed a light on it, that I'm getting up out of here.
Okay, so to the audience, really, if you need to see someone to pull you out of the quicksand because you come up and you go back. You come up, you go back. You have to find a way to see the light, the path to your freedom. And that's what it is, freedom, right? Because you sit in that muck and mire and just start loving it, and it's not healing you, it's just making you comfortable in the place that you are. So thank you for sharing that. The color lavender, tell me about it.
The color lavender, as a hospital chaplain, there is, well, lavender, first of all, is known as a healing plant. It is known for its healing properties. It's known for being able to calm you, and people use it all the time. It has been around for centuries, even during biblical times. They use lavender. And in the hospital, there is something called a code lavender. And you know how you might have heard of a code red or a code blue when someone goes into cardiac arrest. Well, the code lavender happens when you need to go in and support the healthcare workers because they have experienced some sort of trauma. Overwhelming trauma. I'll give you an example. Once there was a young woman who was 14 and she came in and she had tried to hang herself, but she wasn't successful. But she was hanging in the balance. And it was such a traumatic thing for all of the staff because she didn't die right away. And there was this back and forth with the parents, and it just was overwhelming and exhausting. And so what the chaplains do when you have a case like that, or it could be a baby that dies, you go in and you support them emotionally with doing little things to support their emotional well-being. And so it's called code lavender. So it's a code, but it's called lavender to try to help them the trauma of what they're experiencing.
Right.
And so the initial name of the book, I wanted it to be Code Lavender, but I thought I might be violating some trademark rights. So I backed away from the name Code Lavender. But I knew that I was having these conversations with God and they were very healing. And so I thought, I'm having a conversation in lavender with God. And so I named the book Conversations in Lavender because they were conversations that were healing. And so that's how the name came about. And that's where the name lavender comes from.
I think there's a quote in the book, The Color Purple, that suggests that the color purple, lavender, I mean, there's many shades of that healing color, of the healing magnetic force that it has on people when they're in a certain situation. So thank you for that. There's a cover. Let me tell you, it's a beautiful cover. How many times did you redo it? Or was it a one-shot deal for you?
It was one time,
No,
one.
don't tell me that.
Yeah, it was one and done. I saw it and I was like, that's it. That's the cover. And so we went with that.
And the publisher did that for you?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
You know, and I did not let him get his creative juices on my cover. I think I'm going to change my I think I'm going to change my mind.
When he did it, he put my name on the cover and it was so big. And I was like, I don't want my name to be that big. It shouldn't be that big. It was like, it's supposed to be that big. And I was like, it's supposed to be small. Can you make my name smaller? He says, no, I'm not going to make it smaller. So he left it like it was. So it was good.
It's a beautiful cover. And when I saw it, I thought, I wonder if William designed that. And have I stopped myself from something very creative? So I'm going to change my mind about that, I think. For those of you who don't know, Romalita and I share the same publisher. It's Lee's Press. And he is a phenomenal young man who has decided to make literacy a legacy. So thank you. So I understand you're working on another book.
Yes, I am working on another book, and it's a children's book.
Yeah.
And it's all done, and it's in the hands of an artist right now. And the title of the book is called Where I Come From. And the inspiration behind that book was my daughters, because I do a lot of African American history teaching around the house and as a former history teacher. And my daughters, when they would go to school, they were a little ashamed of when it was time for Black history and the topic of slavery would come up. and they would sink down in their seats. They didn't want anybody to say anything. Everybody in the class would turn and look at them. And so I felt like there are a lot of children like that. And I still go and volunteer sometimes in the classrooms, and I can see that some of the kids still feel that way. But I want to change that narrative, because I don't feel we have anything to be ashamed of. We're not proud of what happened to our ancestors, but we come from great stock. They were horticulturists. They were veterinarians. They were nurses. They were doctors. They were veterinarians. They were all these things that they don't get credit for. You just hear they were slaves. They were the enslaved, and that's it. But they were so much more. They were so much more. They were architects, and they were carpenters, and they were all of these jobs and careers that nobody ever talks about what they gave.
Yeah.
And the different people that held these different jobs, nobody talks about that. There was an enslaved woman that made Abraham Lincoln's wife's dresses, Elizabeth Keckley. Nobody talks about that they designed Duke Chapel, that a Black man designed Duke Chapel and half of Duke's campus. Nobody talks about that. But so I wrote the book to have a different conversation and change the narrative about how and the way we see ourselves. And so I think that children would be proud, and they would grow up to see that if they could do that, so can I. And so that's basically, it started off as a poem that's in Conversations in Lavender. And it's called Memory of a People. And from that, I took that poem and wrote it into a story.
Now, you have to be very succinct when you're talking about doing a children's book. Did you find that difficult to be able to use a paragraph to do, when you write a book, you can do a whole page, you can do 3 or 4 pages. Did you find it difficult to kind of compact it and make sure that they understand through the visual, through the picture?
Well, I'm waiting to see what the artist does with the words.
Okay.
And so the words, I'm used to writing for children, for my own children and other children. And when my daughters were growing up, I would write them stories for their birthday. I would give them a storybook. I would have it bound and everything, and it would be their own little storybook. So I'm used to writing for children, so I didn't find that difficult. But there were words and language, because I had to be sensitive to the topic of slavery. So I didn't want to bring in about beatings, and because we know that gets talked about. So this was a positive story. And so I tried to be conscious of that and stay there, and wasn't trying to glamorize slavery or anything, but I wanted it to be something uplifting. So, and then at the back of the book, there's a glossary that whoever's reading the story to the children could explain the terms to them in a way that they understand them.
And it will be done, hopefully.
I wanted it to be done by Juneteenth, but I don't know, maybe by school time, maybe the artist will be finished, but we'll see.
Well, it would be nice to have it featured at the F.R.E.H Book Festival. Now that's in February, right? We do have a young group of people at the elementary school who love to act. So if we could get the book in their hands, they could act it out.
Wow. That's right. I didn't even think of that.
They did that last year. A Black History book was written by Rakia Beverly, and they enjoyed that so much. And so I got a call from their teacher not too long ago that says, what are we doing this year? And I thought, well, let's get through a couple more months. But yeah, they're really excited. So we're looking for a book to present to them that hasn't been banned, and that could still resonate to them, Black history. So keep in touch. So maybe we'll be able to make that happen.
I shall.
So what's part 2 for Conversations?
Well, when I was out walking, I didn't think there was anything else, but when I was out walking and that poem came to me, I said, okay, God, you're not through with me. And so I don't know. So I was thinking another book, but it will be entitled So This Is Love.
Okay. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I thought you would write something. Now I had a conversation. Now I have the answers.
So this is love. That's the answer. So this is love.
It's love.
Yeah.
How did your friends and family feel when you said, I'm gonna write a book?
My friends were very excited. I think my family was very apprehensive about what's going to be in this book.
Oh,
And I,
because they thought you might write something about them.
yeah, so
Right.
but I was very, very careful. This book was about not trying to expose anybody, not trying to hurt anybody. This was about my truth. And I tried to do it in a sensitive and delicate way, where I didn't hurt anybody. And that was what I kept saying. I don't want to hurt anybody. I just, this is what I have, and it's not done to hurt anybody. It was for my own healing, and I knew that if I was feeling this way, there might be other people that are feeling this way too, that might benefit from this book of prayers and poems. And so they were a little bit apprehensive, but when the book came out, my middle sister got it immediately.
Of course.
She was nosy. She
Yeah.
wanted to know what was in it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she got it. And she called me up, and it was really, really a beautiful moment. She called me up and she said, I got your book. And she was crying. And then she read my poem back to me, because they had never seen any of my work, read any of my work. And then she read it back to me, and I had never heard anybody read my words back to me. So it was really a touching moment, because she was crying and she was saying it was so beautiful. And, and she read it to me through her tears. And so that was really,
Nice.
so really, they embraced it when we did the book launch. They came down. Many of them came down to the book launch. So that was really special. I've got two of my friends on here, Ty and Jennifer.
Hi,
Tonight,
Jennifer.
shout out to Ty and Jennifer. They were in Divinity School with me at Duke. And so I'm so happy they're on here. But yeah, so that my friends were ecstatic. And they got tired of me probably asking them, could you listen to this poem? Tell me what you think. Especially Jennifer. But anyway, so yeah, my family and my friends, they were very, very happy and accepting.
I was apprehensive when my great nephew said, I'm going to Duke. I mean, I really wanted him to go, right? But I was a
Mhm.
little apprehensive because it has, there's been things about that area. But
Yeah.
he's blossomed
Mhm.
as part of the football. I guess that's a real football family, Duke, right?
Yeah.
And has done very well there. So I'm glad that we as a family made a decision for him to go. His name is Trey Freeman, if you ever see him on the football
Go
field
Trey.
for Duke.
Go
For
Duke.
Duke. Yeah.
Go Trey. Go Duke.
So is there anything else you would like to share with us that we may have not discussed?
I'm just so grateful that you would have me on here. This is what, you know, and as melanated people. And so, not that you can't have other people on here, but thank you for lifting me up and putting my name out here and giving me a platform to share my story and my journey and my work. And I really do appreciate it. Thank you
Oh, that's what
so
Zoom
much.
in on a fresh conversation is all about, right? Because our platforms aren't as plentiful, right? So we
Mhm.
need these kind of platforms so people will remember what we did,
Yes, that's
right?
right.
As
Yeah.
authors and as writers and as book lovers,
Mhm.
so that we won't have to write books about what we did. We already wrote a book about what we did, right? We
That's
won't have
right.
to think about it. So it's good. I like the whole concept of it. It is time consuming, but my grandmother used to say, don't wish your life away because it goes by so fast. I guess everybody's grandmother said that, right?
Yeah.
And to do
Everybody.
as much as you can
That's
in the
right.
talent that you have. And
Mhm.
so I like to push that on people, just whatever the talent is, take it. And since I was always in trouble for talking in school, in college, I figured I might as well use that talent to help other people put their mark at their book. So thank you so much for that. Tell us how to get in contact with you and to obtain a copy of your book, please.
Okay, so you can get in touch with me several ways through conversationsinlavender.com. You can message me there. You could reach out to me on Instagram at Miss Romalita or through Facebook at Romy Harrison. And you could reach out to me, direct messaging me there. You could get the book at Barnes & Noble online or Amazon online as well.
This is love. What are we looking at? Mid-year?
So this is love. So this
Yeah.
is love.
Yeah.
I don't know about So This Is Love. I
Put a time on it. Come on, put a date on it.
so I've got these children's books. I'm working on these children's books. So I've got another one. Another children's book is coming down the pike. So
Okay.
we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, good. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. So we ask all of our guests to give us a pearl of wisdom. And so I'll take one from you now.
Oh, so I actually have two.
I'll take two.
You can't heal what you won't look at.
Repeat that.
You can't heal what you won't look at.
Absolutely.
And the other one is that you are the arbiter of your own freedom.
You can't heal what you won't look at. Girl, let me write that down.
So there you have it. Those are my pearls of wisdom.
I thank you so much for that. I think it's going to resonate with so many people.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It has been a
Thank you
pleasure.
all for being here tonight. The Zoom in conversation group gang. I love you guys for being here with me every Monday night. And I hope you all can make it to the F.R.E.H Book Festival in February. That is Black History Month, the last weekend in February. And as always, when the lights go out and the cell phone towers go down, all you have left is a flashlight and a good book. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Romalita. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Right.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you again.
You're welcome.